Do you ever catch yourself looking back and thinking, I've wasted so much time? Maybe you look at where you are right now compared to where you thought you would be, and there is this heavy, sinking feeling in your chest. It is the quiet, silent grief of mourning the life you could have lived, the paths you did not take, the choices you second-guess, and the years that seem to have just slipped through your fingers like dry sand. It leaves you wondering if your absolute best years are permanently in the rearview mirror. If you're feeling this way right now, I want you to take a deep, slow breath. You are not alone, and you are not broken. Today, we're not going to talk about forced, toxic positivity. Instead, we're going to look calmly at why your brain traps you in the past and why this heavy baggage you are carrying is not entirely your fault. You see, to understand this deep exhaustion, we have to look at the architecture of your mind. Inside your brain is a system called the default mode network. Think of it as the inner author of your life story. When you're not deeply focused on a specific task, this network powers up. It reflects on memories and builds your sense of identity. But when we experience existential burnout, this network gets hijacked. It stops being a quiet library of memories and becomes a locked room. It forces us to endlessly review our perceived failures. Neurologically, this is known as a ruminative loop. Every retrospective thought you pull up is instantly tagged with a biological filter of sadness or threat. You are not just remembering the past, you are physically feeling the weight of it all over again. Now, this is heavily compounded by what psychologists call the grief of the phantom life. The phantom life is that idealized parallel timeline you carry in your head. It is the imaginary timeline where you made all the right choices, where there was no friction, no wrong turns, and no wasted time. We constantly compare our messy, real present to this flawless imaginary ghost. And because of the brain's deep-rooted negativity bias, we become paralyzed. We feel we have invested too much time in the wrong direction, so we sit in the ruins of our regrets. We exhaust our mental energy endlessly sharpening the pencil. We agonize over what we should have written, and we become completely paralyzed by the fear of writing on the actual page of the present. How do we break out of this locked room? The first step is realizing that your inability to simply move on is not a flaw in your character. It is a biological function of your brain's attention economy. When you are deeply engaged in the present, your mind uses a system called the task-positive network. Think of this network as a skilled craftsman, laying brick by brick, entirely focused on building a sturdy house. But our mental energy is a finite resource. When that energy depletes, the brain operates like a seesaw. It automatically shifts weight back to the default mode network to recover. If we are not careful, that quiet recovery state quickly turns into an internal courtroom, a place where we put our past choices on trial. Now, this trial is rigged by what psychologists call the sunk cost fallacy. We look at the years we spent on a specific career path or a long-held ambition, and the brain's loss aversion kicks in. The pain of letting go of that time feels twice as intense as the potential relief of starting over. We frame walking away as a monumental failure, rather than a necessary logical pivot in the architecture of our lives. We become trapped in the belief that because we spent a decade pouring a foundation in one direction, we are permanently obligated to finish a house we no longer even want to live in. To escape this mental trap, we have to change the fundamental way we define a successful life. Much of our existential burnout, particularly as we move through our 30s, 40s, and beyond, comes from living what philosophers call a deeply telic life. A telic activity is purely goal-driven, like getting a specific promotion or reaching a financial milestone. The quiet tragedy of a purely telic mindset is that the very moment you achieve the goal, you destroy the source of meaning that kept you going. If you fall short, you feel like a failure, and if you succeed, you are left feeling utterly hollow. The profound shift we must make is moving toward atelic meaning.
An atelic activity has no terminal endpoint. The value is found entirely in the process. It is the quiet discipline of a morning walk, the careful tending of a garden, or the simple act of reading a beautiful book. You see, you do not walk in a quiet forest to finish the forest. The purpose is in the walking itself. When you realize your best years are not defined by checking off milestones on an imaginary timeline, but by the quality of your presence in the daily process, the heavy fog of regret begins to lift. You stop waiting to arrive, and you finally start to live.
So how do we practically step out of the time machine of regret? How do we stop the endless cycle of looking backward and gently anchor ourselves in the present? The answer lies in intentionally shifting the gears of your mind. When you feel the heavy gravity of regret pulling you back into the courtroom of your past, you must break the loop physically. You can intentionally activate your brain's focus system, the task positive network. You do this through tactile grounding actions. Now, this is not about distracting yourself. It is about relocating your awareness. When your mind begins to spiral over wasted time, give your hands a job. Go into the garden and feel the damp soil between your fingers. Organize your desk with deliberate care. Brew a warm cup of tea or coffee. Hold the mug in both hands and focus entirely on the warmth and the rising steam. These simple physical acts work as a profound circuit breaker, pulling your mental energy away from the ghosts of yesterday and bringing it back to the solid reality of right now. Next, we must practice the quiet discipline of radical acceptance. Ancient philosophers understood this through the dichotomy of control. This is the practice of clearly separating what is within our power from what is forever out of our hands. The years you feel you lost, the paths you walked away from, they belong to history. They are a chapter in a book that has already been published. You must realize that the younger version of yourself made choices based on the tools they had, based on the wisdom and the fears they had at that exact moment. Offer them grace. Forgive them. You are allowed to set down the heavy suitcase of what-ifs that you have been carrying for so long. Once you set that weight down, begin rewiring your brain through the daily practice of savoring. Because our minds naturally cling to negative memories, we must consciously build a storehouse of calm, peaceful ones. When you experience a quiet moment, like reading a beautiful paragraph or feeling the cool morning air on a walk, or simply enjoying the stillness of your home, I wish you to pause, linger in that moment for 20 seconds. Let your nervous system register that right now, in this exact phase of your life, you are safe. Finally, give yourself permission to be a beginner again. True reinvention is not a frantic race to catch up on lost time. It is the calm courage to start fresh. You are simply a craftsman choosing a new piece of wood. The story of your life is not defined by the chapters you have already written, nor is it ruined by the pages you wish you could tear out. You see, those past experiences, even the ones that feel like heavy seasons of wasted time, were deeply necessary. They were the harsh, quiet winters that taught you the absolute value of the spring. The paths that led to dead ends were not failures. They were the rigorous training grounds that finally taught you who you are, and more importantly, what you truly value. If you take away only one thing from our time together today, let it be this: your best years are not a fixed biological window that you somehow missed. They are not locked away in your past, trapped in a perfect timeline that vanished while you were looking the other way. Your best years begin the exact moment you drop the burden of regret and decide to be fully, completely present in the life you actually have. Peace is not found in building a time machine to fix yesterday. It is found in the quiet, profound acceptance of right now. You have not lost your life. You have simply finished the prologue. The main narrative is waiting for you to pick up the pen. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, and the room is still quiet, I invite you to take a slow, deep breath. Look out the window at the morning light and give yourself the ultimate grace of starting over. Let go of the phantom life. Forgive the younger version of yourself. Step out of the shadows of what could have been and step gently into the beauty of what is. If this message brought you a sense of peace today, I invite you to subscribe and join us here at TrueFlow Life. We are building a quiet corner of the world dedicated to meaningful growth, dropping the heavy baggage of the past, and finding calm in the present. Until next time, remember to breathe deeply, move with purpose, and let your life truly flow.